to another episode of Creationship Goals. Today we have Amanda Riann Clark. She is actually, would you like to introduce yourself and kind of tell
I was so curious as to what you think my job is.
I was, yeah.
Go for it. Let's see what
Okay.
you think my deal is.
You do improv, you do stand up, you do improv and stand up, and you teach kids improv.
Yes.
I don't know how, but you do, that's all I know. You teach kids
there you
improv.
go. Yeah, I mean, it's all they're very weird, but it's very fun and refreshing. So I am a comedy performer, I suppose, as well as a writer. I came out to LA to pursue comedy, and the dream is to be paid to be funny. So that's sort of what I do. But I also am a little bit of an artist. I like doodle here and there. And other than that, just general creative. I got a TikTok, TikToks are real popular these days. But that's about it. So all sorts of things.
That's amazing. What kind of got you started in that? Where did you find this knack for creativity? I mean, if you were to go back to you as a little kid, what kind of brought that whole process?
Yeah, totally. Honestly, creativity, like in particular, not just like comedy in general, I have like a deep passion for. I actually, like, when I was young and like probably fourth or fifth grade, I did something called Destination Imagination. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
It might have been. It's definitely an American thing, and it might be like so. Yeah. So sorry, I don't know if you have it where you're from, California.
It's so poor,
No, but it's this like. It's literally also Odyssey of a Mind is another version of it where it's just this creativity competition where a bunch of kids from all over schools, they have schools like in your state or your area, right? They have there's like teams of 5 or 6, and they have like 8 different challenges, and each year the challenge is slightly different, but each challenge revolves around like building something or like performing something or like basically using your imagination, and it's super cool. And that was the first time it like forced me to like flex a muscle about like being like outside of the box. And there were like theater competitions, but the competition that I did first was like improv based. And I think improv is so steeped in creativity, and like obviously because you're literally like making a world for yourself. And Destination Imagination was also cool because they would also have like mini challenges as well that like you were like you could, the main one we competed in was the improv one, but they would also have many challenges that you didn't know what was coming. And it would be like, build the tallest tower out of lasagna noodles, or like, make, like a bridge that can hold like so many things. And they give you all these different supplies and like a certain time limit. And so like, I remember specifically going to like practices for that and being like, oh man, first of all, having so much fun. And the first time like being forced to think outside of the box was like the mom who was running it giving me a cup and saying, what is this? And I was like, it's a cup. And they're like, okay, next person, what is this? And we couldn't repeat. And you had to just be like, it's, I don't know, a hat. Like it's a listening device. Like it's like, and just like being so like, all right, but like, what's a different way that you can look at that and like deconstruct the world that's around you and break it down to its parts and then rebuild it, and what do you have, and so that was the first time that I personally started to like really get a knack for creativity and improv. And so that's sort of where I started, I guess.
So that's really been around like since the beginning. I mean, how old were you when you did that?
Probably 8 or 9 or so, So.
Is this just open to 8 or 9-year-olds, or can like a 24-year-old do it if they want to? Because it sounds really fun.
It's definitely like a school extracurricular thing where it's it's definitely, they divide it between like elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, and I think they do have a college level, but by the time you're in like high school, college, like there's like almost nobody who's competing. I will say the first year that we did it, we went to state, and we competed at the state level, and it was very fun. I think it was a bit of a fluke. I mean, rewatching it, I was like, wow, this is really good. It was not consistent with what we like normally did. And when we got to state, it was like, oh right, we're a handful of weirdos, but it definitely like inflated our egos for a bit. And then the next year we did it, I just didn't even go on. It was like in that era when like random was funny, but it wasn't actually, like it was like we had this like talking evil muffin, and we were like, this is comedy gold, and that was not the case. So.
But I hear a secret message underneath there, Josh, and I hear that you really want to pursue something here. You want to
sounds
work
amazing.
with preschoolers on a creative projects, I hear.
I would join the preschoolers and do improv with preschoolers.
Well.
Oh, absolutely. That's my job now.
Yeah. Talk about your job a little bit. We don't have to talk about it a lot, but is it like that where you're doing exercises like that with kids?
I mean, a little bit. It's like, I am very blessed. It's funny because I told Jesus about a year ago, about 2 years ago, actually, I got this like really cool job that I loved. I was working for a very popular internet comedy company, and I like felt like a hot potato, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best. Like this is where I want to be, because like I'm a funny person, and ultimately I'm going to go into comedy, and I'm going to like write sketches and stuff. And it was interesting going to that job and like loving the idea of that job, but then like being there and being very uncomfy there, and like being like, I feel like I am very restricted in a very small cog and like a pretty big like machine, and just not really feeling like close to anybody there. And that kind of sucking, especially because I was a PA, which is like one of the like lower level things. So I was like running around working super hard, and like the people who I felt like more of a kinship to were like the writers. But they very much so kept us kind of separated. And like, I don't know, I was like, when I got that job, my first of all, my jaw dropped to the floor, because it was 100% a Jesus thing. I didn't apply for it. I literally just like did a random job. The assistant director liked me and then brought me on to a thing. And I was at a community night. This was in like 2019. And I was like, oh man, I have a call at 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. I can't stay up and worship. This is such a bummer. I got to go to bed. And then I'm like looking at my email being like, okay, like where's this location that I'm going to? And up at the top, it says like, can I say it? Would that be weird for me to say like exactly what it is? I don't want to like.
No, go for it.
Yeah.
Okay. It was like at the top, it was like College Humor. Like this building, blah, 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 5 a.m. And I was like, what? College Humor? Because I'd literally been watching their videos like since I came to LA, being like, I could do this. This is right here, And then so like coming back in, and they're having like a deep, meaningful conversation about like what it means, blah, blah, blah. And me just being like, guys, I just got my dream job, freaking out about it. And then being really excited. Obviously I still like loved going to that building and like driving through Hollywood feeling like everyone wanted my attention, because there's huge billboards, being like, for your consideration. So I got this job at College Humor, and I like loved it. But then as I started going, I was like increasingly disappointed, and like, oh man, this isn't everything that I thought it was going to be. And it was really a blessing, because it ended up getting to a point where I didn't have to like be let go by them because I made a couple of mistakes that I'm like not proud of. Or I also didn't have to decide to quit on my own from this like dream, because College Humor itself kind of had to fire everybody basically. At the end of 2019, they had this huge like holiday party that was like, everybody was like drinking and having fun. And it was like, because it was basically their end of the world party, and we knew we weren't coming back after the break. And so after that, I was like, okay, well, God, I know that you put me out here to pursue comedy and like to do this thing. And like I've been saying from the get-go, like my dream is just to be paid to be funny. And honestly, Jesus, like I want to be doing improv all the time. Like that is being paid to do improv all the time. That's what I want to be doing. And I met this person. This was like March. First of all, after the College Humor ended, I was like super depressed, and then had like some personal stuff that was going on that just made it even worse. So like all of like Valentine's of 2020 for Amanda was like a hot mess, just like not good. And then I met this random person from Evergreen Church, which is the church that our roommates Danielle and a couple people from the Culver House go to. And this person was like, oh yeah, I like to connect Christians in the industry with like mentors who are also Christians in the industry. It was like a random event. We had like gone to like a movie theater, and I like met this girl on a whim. Literally, my friends didn't even stay there to see the movie. I just did because I was like, I don't know, might as well. And like got connected with her, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is Jesus. Like this is amazing. She's gonna be like my golden ticket to like do it, which is what I thought College Humor was. I was like, this is my golden ticket to like be a creator, blah blah blah. And then so she was like, okay, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I kind of want to direct, but I also really like acting, and I'm a production designer, so blah, 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 blah. And she was like, you need to focus. You need to pick one thing, and you need to do that. And I was like, okay. So I sat down the next day and wrote her like a 1,200 word email about like, I've decided to do improv, and that's all I'm going to do. And in the meantime, I might work a couple of gigs, but like all I want to do is like improv, and then like move up through there. That was on like March 14th, 15th of 2020. And then I was like, great, okay, cool. I've figured out my life. I'm going to drive Postmates so that I can like support myself. And then everything shut down. And I was like, awesome.
Great.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I literally told Jesus, I was like, I want to be doing improv all the time. Like that is my dream. And then they're like, actually, you're going to be doing improv none of the time. And so I was like, oh, okay. So, and it was actually kind of a relief to like have that pressure taken off of me. And also without a comedy scene, I was just like, okay, well, I don't have like, used to be like every night of the week, if I wanted to like refine my craft, I would have to force myself to go to a like evening, like comedy jam or like an open mic to practice my stand-up. And those weren't happening anymore. And live comedy on the internet is garbage. It's awful. I hate it. I wish it didn't exist. Terrible. But so basically I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm just going to have to write all of the time now. And I had myself do a thing called Script Timber, where I wrote a script every day in September. I could tell you more about that, but I just am now remembering that this question was originally about my job with kids. So I'm going to tie it back. So it was basically, I wrote a ton of stuff, and because all I had was myself at that point, you know, as like just me and Jesus. And I was like, okay, all right, well, I guess I'm actually going to be using this time to like just create as much content as I can. And then I took the really good stuff and submitted it to festivals. And I was like, okay, Jesus, you've demonstrated that you don't want me to really be searching for an actual job during this time, but I just submitted stuff to festivals, which is one of my goals. And that was expensive. So I'm going to need a job now. And literally that day, my friend hit me up and she was like, hey, are you free to work every Saturday at the studio that I'm in? And you would be engaging in an hour of imaginative play with 3-year-olds. And I was like, heck yeah. So that was really, really cool. And so essentially I started working with that studio, and it's just like it's like a little black box theater with a couple of like dance rooms attached to it in the South Bay, and parents bring their kids to do stuff. And it's weird right now because of COVID. They have to have fewer kids and everybody has masks, and it's just like really weird. But basically, like I said, my 3 to 5-year-olds, I engage in an hour of imaginative play, which is goofy. My 5 to 10-year-olds. They're doing Moana. And so I'm teaching them all the songs and the dances, and we're going to perform at the end of their semester. And then also have a couple of classes of 11 to 12-year-olds who are doing I'm teaching improv and sketch comedy and acting classes too. And so that's super duper fun. And that studio actually was really cool, and actually made those classes for me. Like, they didn't have them before. And so now I'm getting to teach these children, and it's fun because I was introduced to playing these games, and it's really a nice full circle thing for me to like now be sort of having a hand in like what was so formative in my life, you know? And so that's cool.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah.
I love that. I love what you were able to learn throughout that whole process, and this this big, huge thing that I'm sure was wonderful working at somewhere like College Humor, to coming back to doing basically what you grew up doing is actually the thing that is benefiting you right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting too, because I very much so know that this is temporary. And I mean, God fulfilled, like, he gave me what I asked for, which is like, I am getting paid to do improv all the time right now. And it's just like not at all what I expected it to look like. But I wish I had it with me. I found it in my journal recently. Like, here's the thing, Amanda, is that like, you like surprising people and you love comedy, or sorry, you like blessing people and you like comedy. And the common thread through both of those is surprise, like being surprised by a blessing, being surprised by a punchline. That is like what makes both of those things work really well. So that is what is going to happen with like Jesus providing for you, is like, you are going to delight in the surprise. You're not going to see it coming. And so that's increasingly what I've learned, is that it's not going to look like what I expect it to look like, where I'm like, God, okay, I need like an entry-level job at like a successful comedy company so that I can start being a part of that. Instead, he's like, no, first of all, it's just going to be different than you expect it to. And also, like, it's just, I don't know, it's just weird. He'll just be like, go play with the kids. And I'm like, okay, forever? And he's like, no, for now, but go and have fun. Like, and I'm like, okay.
That's great.
And it's just really, really lovely. So that's been great.
It's interesting how when we ask God to do stuff like that, that it's always in a way that for some reason it makes us uncomfortable, even though it is exactly tailored to what we love to do. Or, you know, where you say, but this is not what I want. This is not what I'm seeking, you know? And then it's like, but God said, yes, this is what you were seeking. It's just you did not know this was what you were seeking. And this, like, above all, this was something that you needed. Like,
absolutely.
you may not have seen that, but actually, like, this is necessary for you now. You may have an ambition, but I see somewhere where you have an area of growth, and I want to use that. So let's combine the two, you know?
Yeah.
Maximum efficiency. God is a God of efficiency, even though we not always like it in that way, you know?
Yeah, exactly. No, it's so good. And it's also really cool to like know that he's not done with me in performing. Like, he knows how much like I love that, and he is blessing me with an opportunity to like do good right now and do what I love. And also, not for nothing, like, learning how to teach kids improv is a very marketable skill for the rest of my life. I could pretty much waltz into like any studio in Texas and being like, hello, I'm your improv teacher now. Like, I worked in Hollywood. Thank you. You know? And so it's like, it's this interesting thing that like, oh, I'm getting more and more security to like see a future to sustainably do the thing that I love, as opposed to just like stepping out in faith, like cluelessly just being like, all right, well, I guess I like writing, so I'll write a script. Now I have a script. What do I do with it? You know? And so and that being so, I don't know, it's I think making money is like one of the biggest, most stressors for creatives, honestly, because like, and that's honestly why this past year was such a blessing, because I qualified for unemployment. And without that, like, you have to be making money, you have to be like winning, like putting food on your own table or whatever. I was so much more stress-free and was able to create such beautiful things and like actively spend time to be like, all right, without this, because there's no jobs to be had right now, so I'm going to still be productive, but like it was so freeing, honestly, to, you know, not be constrained by like dollars. And if there was any doubt that I was supposed to be here before, and in Los Angeles, I mean, it was completely like destroyed by 2020. I found so much provision for me in the most unexpected ways, where it was just like my church or like my parents or like just random things like coming together to pay my rent for like 8 out of 12 months last year. Like it was insane. The amount that like that Jesus was like, trust me, you are supposed to be here and I will make a way for that to happen. And like, you can stress out about it. You can sit around and be like mad at yourself for not applying to enough jobs, or like depressed because like XYZ didn't work out, but like, I am going to make a way for you. And so it's been really, really lovely. You know,
Good.
there was something else I was going to say, but I forgot. Oh, well.
That's great. I am wondering, like, we're talking a lot, you know, you're mentioning a lot of like the word improv. Like many creative things, the definition of what we love is fluid. So I am really interested in what you would define to be improv for you.
Yeah, totally. Well, have you ever, this is gonna sound, I didn't want this to come off as condescending, but listening to it in my head, it might be, but have you ever like been to an improv show? Like,
I have.
yeah. So, no, but like for me, that's what I would kind of consider to be like the art form of improv, I guess, is like improvisational comedy, where like you have a group of people who will go on stage and they do a show based off of suggestions in the audience, and they perform it there, and then they just, you know, do whatever it is that comes to their mind, right? Now the rules of improv and like the skills you develop because of improv, I would also call like improv, I guess, where things like thinking creatively, like being strategic, like remembering things, you know, listening to people, yes, and you know, all of the like good improv rules. I think that's helpful in any aspect of like your creativity or your life, to be honest. Like it's just so, there's a lot of things that like go into improv that make it like that are useful skills. Like that's why corporate offices do like, we're gonna do like an improv night, you know, and like we're gonna learn team building, and so many improv games are also team building games. It's because it helps you develop those interpersonal connections. It helps you become like gain confidence in yourself in the moment, like develops your public speaking skills. It's great, it's so helpful. But what I've just been discovering is improv is not everything, and there are a lot of things that improv does not help you develop. And as much as I've been heralding it as like the best thing for a while, there's a ton of people who do improv who also have a lot of like shortcomings that I can see in myself, and have been trying to like actively, you know, undo things like consistency and commitment and following up outside of like those things that take to be a creative, outside of the like flashy, I like the applause and being on stage, you know, like the nitty gritty, turning this into a job. There are a ton of improv performers who are not good at that, who are not skilled at it, who just want to come together, have fun with their friends, and then leave, as opposed to turning it into like, okay, how do I take my creative outlet and turn it into a business even when I don't like it? How do I like how do I continue to show up when people aren't clapping for me, you know? And it's very interesting. And I definitely think that's part of like growing up. You like learn as an adult, you're like, oh, right, I have to be a grown up and do things now. And I don't know, improv is great, but I'm learning is more to the world than just being like a good improv performer. You know, there's a lot of value in the structure that goes into it, you know? So.
Yeah, I've thought that too. Is there something that you would apply to your life that you've learned from improv?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a ton of things. Like I'm pretty quick on my feet. I feel like I'm a pretty good listener. I love like collaboration and like working like with other people and kind of listening to like what they've got going on. My storytelling is excellent, like excellent. Um, and my like sense of humor. You learn to be basically how to be funny also in an interesting way. Like you realize you have to be like short and like succinct clearly. And you also like another thing that I really love about improv is like if something's not working, you can just bail, you can just leave, and like there's no harm done. And so, and not to like beat yourself up over like when you go wrong, you know, and just keep moving forward and do it again, get back up on stage. Because as soon as you're in your head about I'm bad at this for improv, you are. It's such a weird mind game. It's like you can tell if somebody feels like they're not doing well at this, you know? And so it's interesting. Mm-hmm. I love it. I
Interesting
love it.
how
I could
you
go on and on. Go ahead.
there's this part where you're saying like, you know, that there this confidence. You like multiple times during this podcast right now. I was saying like I don't want to come over as this or that, you know, or like there's this part of you wanting to come out over as secure, you know, but also wants to communicate well, and that's interesting because there's always that rough line between when we were walking in pride and when we're walking in confidence. So I totally get where you're coming from in that, but at the same time I really love, you know, I love blunt confidence, like people that can just say, and I'm learning that myself. I cannot do that the way you do. To just go like and say like, no, my storytelling, it's excellent, you know, and just loving that, but also being humble enough. But that what someone says like, no, it's not, you know, that you're like, why not, you know, and just talking about it and being teachable. And there's this fine line that's always difficult. But I love the confidence that you're showing in that. Is there somewhere that you feel like, oh, this is somewhere that actually that is a fault, you know, like you're saying like, oh, I have a confidence there, but where is it where you feel like, oh, but there's maybe where I sometimes overstep for myself, where I maybe even walk in pride, you know? Is there somewhere
Oh,
where you feel that?
yes. So it's funny because I am increasingly discovering that you have to just like let yourself have wild confidence and people will believe you. Like it is
Nice.
like it's interesting. There's been a couple of times now where I've had like those like coffee pick your brain moments with like people who are like in the industry, right? And who are you're like, you're so freaking cool. And like they ask you like, oh, like what do you do? And there's been times where I've been like, oh well, I'm just a itty bitty like assistant, blah. And then I get really annoyed when I see other people creating stuff, and I'm like, I could make something like on Amazon Prime. I'll be like, this is not a good TV show. Like I could write
Uh-huh.
something better than
Yeah.
this. And so most recently, I literally just like entered into this conversation with uh my friend connected me to one of the producers of Amphibia. It's a animated TV show on Disney Plus. It's sort of like it's created by one of the co-producers of Gravity Falls. So that's kind of the sense of
Nice.
humor right there.
Nice.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was talking to him, and just off the bat, I was like, "Oh yeah, I wrote this pilot for an animated TV show," and he's like, "Oh, I should connect you with somebody in development," and I was like, so like literally like if I had just stuck with it, it did come out kind of later that I was like greener than I actually am, and like luckily he had like so much really good advice for me. But so yes, it's interesting that you call that out. You're like, oh, you're over here saying like just wild confidence, like my storytelling is great. And I will say, yeah, there have definitely been times where I've been humbled, where I've been like, oh no, I thought that this was one way and I was completely wrong. My entire college like application process like was abysmal because I thought I was better than I was, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
so constantly, that's the other thing too, is like you constantly have to improve, right? And you have to be
Mm-hmm.
consistent. So when you ask like, oh, what are some of my weaknesses, I would definitely say that like um it is really committing to that structure is like hard for me. And but I have been able to do it. That's kind of what this past year has been about for me, is like learning like, oh my gosh, I'm so much sharper and so much better at this when I commit the time to practice, and commit the time to work on it. And like, you can have like a knack for something, but that doesn't develop your like innate talent into a skill unless you do it over and over and over again. Like, the cartoon that I mentioned I was writing, I am a pretty good doodler, I like can like I'm pretty talented, right? But as soon as I was like, okay, I want to make an animated series, it was fascinating to like visually see the progression of me drawing something, getting annoyed with it, drawing it again, being like, that's better, and drawing it a third time and being like, this is so much better, like even just within the span of a day. And then a week would go by and I was back to square one, and I was like, there's something into this there's something to this practice makes perfect thing that people talk about, and as like a little dazzly creative, I never really like wanted to believe that was true, and I was like, no, I like thrive without structure, but and that's not the case at all. And so but I will say is that I don't know, I could get into my soapbox about this in particular, but it's been like my experience that like women especially will like talk down their skills and like not believe that they're talented at something because they don't want to come off as like too much, basically, and so like I remember times when I should have been like given a raise, or like I should have like been able to do extra things, or like asked to do something, but people didn't because like I cut my own self off at my knees. And so I'm learning to just kind of adopt the like wild confidence of like honestly I saw a post on the internet that was like, how would your life change if you just adopted the wild confidence of a mediocre white man? And I was like, yeah, wait a minute.
I approve that.
Exactly. And I was just like, you know what, yes, if I just like decide that I am good at this stuff, because I meet so many people. Stand-up especially was so good for me in that regard, where I would go to stand-up shows and I would watch people and I would be like, these people are not talented. These are not, or like not that they're not talented, but like me being like, why am I getting in my own way and like not letting myself thrive while this person is up on stage like telling bad jokes and not being nearly as funny as I feel like I would be in that situation. And it's because they just decided that they were good and talked to the right people and talked about themselves like they were that talented, And the other thing too is like I've increasingly been able to rely heavily on like God's confidence too. I think that's the difference now between where I am now and where I was before. Like I used to be like, oh, me and my talent and my skill, that's what's going to get me far. And now it's so much more like, no, God has blessed me with gifts and I am going to use those, and God is going to use me and put me in situations. So like, I know I can handle this. And so it's interesting. It's kind of the opposite of the coin of the imposter syndrome that people talk about, so.
Yeah, because especially when we're talking about things like faith and trying to be like, being so super humble, it is almost an excuse to talk down your gifts, trying to be as no, it's not about me. Well, actually, the thing that you do actually involves 100% you, especially when you're standing on stage, it's you are there.
Totally.
And you better accept it. And so there is this, I love that, because one thing that is for me a real big thing right now is just that idea of confidence, also just by accepting like, oh no, but I am actually really hugely involved in my own process. And it's not just saying like, trying to give all the God the glory and trying to move myself out of the picture, but actually by union, by unity. So I really love what you're saying, because that part of being a confident person is actually like essential in walking into your calling. And I think like, I was talking with Josh during the break, we really want to talk a bit also about the Hollywood scene. And I think when we're talking about things like Hollywood, if there's one egomania, that's like Hollywood. And so there is this part like when we're talking about you being a Christian within the Hollywood scene, how do you walk with that bold confidence, while at the same time, not being walking into that egomania, as we would call it. How do you do
For
that? How do you
sure.
pursue that?
For sure. I mean, I personally am just so blessed and lucky. And this is also, for the record, something that I still like struggle with. But it's funny, before I came out to LA, there were so many people who were like, oh, you're gonna hate it, you're gonna blah blah blah. I remember being in like my dentist, like me being like, oh, I'm gonna go to Los Angeles, and then being like, you're not gonna like it. And I'm like, okay, like, how would you know? And also,
Yeah.
obviously you don't like it, otherwise you would be there. Like, the people who liked this, they liked LA, are in LA. And so like I went there, and I was blessed that pretty immediately I found a church family that led me to a community family, which is like the houses that we live in are a bunch of like people from a bunch of different churches, all love Jesus though. And then within that, finding like those relationships and those like friendships and like those needs that are so necessary to living anywhere, not just in Los Angeles, but like connections with human beings. I'm blessed that vast majority of those are all Christian relationships, and I am in like a very Christian environment. So there's so many people I would hear being like, oh, everybody in LA is fake and like everything is blah blah blah, and I was like, that has not been my experience at all. Or it would be like, even outside of like my Christian circles, it would be people I was meeting being like, oh my gosh, you're creating this awesome thing, I'm creating an awesome thing, like let's do it together, And I guess maybe that's just like authenticity and like love and passion, like begets authenticity, love and passion, and encouragement. But so personally for me, my experience of like Hollywood, has been very positive, because even in like, I guess what my experience of like the industry has been, I've been able to like step back and like hide in my little like safe place with all of my roommates who like all love Jesus and pour Jesus into me instead, even when it does like hurt me. And so I guess like it is very interesting to like, because like the first year, I guess, that I was out here, I was freelancing like crazy. And it's interesting to see the difference between like a passion project that you're doing like with people who all want to be there and like love it, and people who are doing it for a business, and like how soul crushing it is. And I will say, like, since I've been here for a while, there are definitely people who I've met who I'm like, oh, this is the LA that everyone was talking about, how they're fake and awful. I went to a party at one point, and I was the sober one basically, and I was sitting on a couch, and everyone was blasted drunk, and like I literally, the only person who like came over to me, like sat down next to me and started a conversation. I was like, oh, what do you do? He didn't even say anything. He just like pulled up his Instagram and showed it to me, and it said like entrepreneur or something like that. And I was like, that is not us like engaging in a conversation. And like it just was like so sad to watch people just like freaking do coke in this Airbnb that some random group rented in the hills, and like it was just like, oh, this is sad. This is the brokenness that like people come and see here. And I am very blessed to have not been a part of that. And pretty much exclusively the people who I work with and the people who I get to create with, like, love the process itself, And so it's interesting. And I will say, and again, not to get back up on my like feminist soapbox, but like it is also interesting being like a face, I guess, in like, and having, like you're saying before, like me being a part of like what I'm creating, and witnessing like, I guess, the like internet and like commodification of like how a person looks, like, and that being so much stronger here than like anywhere else that I've lived. Like basically people in LA are hot. Let me expound on that. partially it's the sunshine, obviously, partially it's just a culture of like being healthier, which is great, eating better, you know, working out more, cool. But also, if you go too far into that direction, it also gets to like, well, my face has to look this symmetrical or else I won't get followers or I won't get money. Or like, oh, I have to like, if I am not like absolutely perfect like this celebrity is, who has been airbrushed, like has a team of stylists and like makeup people and like everybody behind them to like look like that, then like I am not like worthy. And like it has been very interesting. Like I feel super blessed that like I guess like looks is like something obviously that I mean is not my only thing that I value about myself, you know. And there's like a lot of people out here who that is the case, you know. And there's a lot of people who like will pay a lot of money to fix tiny insignificant things, because there is this culture of like, oh, if you don't like it, like don't live with it, fix it, you know. And that's going to be like looking prettier is ultimately going to be the thing that like makes you happy. And that just feels really unhealthy and heartbreaking for me. And I have kind of come to this realization also with when I was saying like, oh, my story tells are really great, or like the wild confidence before, like I've kind of come to this terms with like attractiveness, where it's like there's always going to be somebody who's prettier than me, and there's always going to be somebody who is not as pretty as me, you know. And it's just like it's this wild spectrum. And so there are always going to be people who are funnier than me, there are always going to be people who are like richer than me, there are always going to be anything that I want to be, there's going to be somebody who's more. And so it's hard because it becomes very easy to start comparing yourself, you know. Which was a thing that I was thinking about, not to give away too much, Josh, but you were asking me before, like, oh, who's somebody who really inspires you, right? I realized I was like, as far as like creators go, I have to be very careful with who I like allow to inspire me because of that comparison thing, you know, where it's like, oh, this person is the same age as me and they have 5 million followers on YouTube and they're so funny, and like I could do that if like I wanted to. But like that comparison ultimately not being a motivator at all. What really actually motivates me is people seeing me for who who God sees me as I could be, you know, who's like, oh, like, wow, you've got X, Y, and Z that like Jesus loves about you, and I see that about you, and I love that about you. And me just being like, thank you. And like really that being like, okay, wait, yeah, I can do this, you know. Versus like comparing yourself, because ultimately it's just anything that you do laterally, like as opposed, like when you compare yourself to other people versus like being like inwardly focused about like how have I been in the past, you know, will ultimately be your downfall. And especially I think with looks, but also with just any perspective, you know. So that's my thoughts on the industry. I don't know if that was the direction you're kind of going for.
No, that was great. I know I've experienced that with pursuing the industry and wanting to be this light in this very dark, depressing place that really wants to suck all of that light out of you. And you want to be this joy, you want to have this confidence, and then everyone is telling you to do the opposite, basically.
Has that been your experience?
I would say I've had a lot of negative experiences. I've met a lot of negative people that are so far from the person that I want to be as a light in the industry. I mean, a big reason we started the podcast was to bring people that are in different ways part of the entertainment industry, wanting to make a difference, wanting to do something special in it, and wanting to do it for Jesus. Because that's the thing. That's where a lot of my confidence comes from. I think I can say that about you too, is that what we get this confidence from something that's different, from something that's supernatural. It teaches us to look beyond ourselves, to not make it about us, to not make it about the followers of the money. Like you said, you trusted God for your money and he provided. You trusted God for your talent and he provided. So all you can say to these people that you meet in the industry is like, it's because of God. It's not really by my works, because there's always going to be someone better than me. It's because I have God. And that's something I try to constantly remind myself, because I'm constantly comparing myself, because I want to be like those people that I see.
You know, in a certain way, it's also like, you know, we as people within life, we think that our works are our end, you know. We think like if we want to go somewhere, our goal will be that what we can do. Well, God uses this as a means, and there's a difference. And I think, you know that the typical saying, you know, it's a means to an end. You're using something to get somewhere. And God's way of, like, God's end goal is always different than the thing that he uses. So, you know, even though we have that talent is not the end goal. It's that what's being used. And so I really love what you're saying, Josh, because in the end, that part where we're going for is something that is infinitely more valuable than, you know, the thing that we do. Because that's why we do it, because we know that whatever is ahead of us is way better than what we have right now. You know. And so I think, like, also to talk about, you know, to put it in perspective of bringing the kingdom of God, you know, on earth, to really manifest his presence in whatever we do. Our things that we do, even like in that sense, almost also sometimes us, are a means to that end, you know, even though we are a part of that end as well. And so I really agree with you, like, you know, living in a Dutch culture where actually a thing like confidence, you know, is a really big thing, you know. We are really confident in the things we say, sometimes too bluntly even. But what that also does is that we sometimes forget our position within the universe. You know, in the end, the things that we say, the things that we strive towards, they are all means. They are all means. And the end that we're going towards is way, way more beautiful, you know, than where we are right now. And so, you know, when you're saying, you know, about the podcast, it's so true. Like, we really hope that this podcast is like will function as a guide in some way. A guide, not as in, okay, Josh and I, we know what we're going towards, but more as in we're figuring it out together. And we're staying together, like you said, Amanda, you know, having a community of people that will champion you. They will say, like, what I see in you, that's amazing, that is great. That is my soapbox. And I think to really see you as well, Amanda, and see you walk in that confidence. I want to champion you as well. I really see you walk in that confidence, and I really see you want to pursue something, but at the same time have that grace over yourself to say, let it have the time that it needs. You know? So I really see that, and I want to really encourage you with that. That's really beautiful, and I think it's something that I can learn sometimes as well, and I think many more that are listening. So just really grateful to have you on here. It's really amazing. It's really
Thank
cool.
you. Yeah, no, this has been super, super good. And yeah, like I said, it's been, I mean, it's hard, and I'm not going to say that I am like perfect. I literally have to like trick myself into like making stuff sometimes, which is a weird part that they don't tell you about, where it's like every single writer hates writing. Like they just hate it, you know? It's like, it is so funny how, I don't know, like, there's so many like obstacles in this like entire like process that like making yourself another one is just like not a good idea. You know. There was something else that I was gonna say. I forgot what it was though.
No, this is good. I like saying these things because it is easier said than done to have that confidence, to have that faith in yourself. But I think that's what I constantly strive for. That's the thing that brought me out of the hell that was 2020. I mean, you even know some of the things that we all went through. And but that's the thing I'm fighting for. And I see that's what you're fighting for. I see you as a resilient person that fights for that confidence that comes from God. And
Totally.
there's nothing like it. And
absolutely. Yeah.
so
Let's go.
to wrap it up, I thought this would be really fun with you.
Okay.
We like to ask like a really like fun, dumb, funny question at the end of the podcast, just because we had this really insanely deep conversation. But with
Bring it
you,
on.
because you're good at improv, I thought it'd be really fun to like rapid fire a bunch, and for you to just come up with like the first answer that comes up at the top of your head.
Totally. Let's go. Let's go. Speed round. I'm so ready. Wait, let me get a glass of water so I can.
Yes. All right, ready?
I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready. Go for it.
What is the weirdest animal and why?
Those lemurs with the really big eyes, and because they have really big eyes. Next.
What's the best type of cheese?
Brie, a nice soft one with a cracker you can dip, but goat cheese is also good. Next.
Okay.
That's disgusting.
It is gross. Well, in one sentence, how would you sum up the internet?
Lots of cats and porn and connections while Google watches everything. Next.
Okay. If you only had a chicken, how would you use it to kill an elephant?
If I only had a chicken, I would develop a disease within the chicken to like over time to poison that chicken that I would keep on feeding it like cyanide and stuff, but like slowly, so it still gets like really fat and tasty. Then I would feed the cyanide filled chicken to the elephant, and then I would kill it. Next.
That's great. Cool. Very interesting. What's the most imaginative insult you can come up with?
Oh, yeah, I feel like they're dark ones. Hold on. I want to be like, your mom is disappointed in you. That's bad.
That's imaginative.
That works.
Totally.
I feel like no. I would be like, you are as I if I had a choice between you and the dust that I sweep up into the pan in my kitchen, I would want to hang out with the dust. Next.
Wow.
All right. What mythical creature would improve the world most if it existed?
Teleporting kittens. Kittens you can teleport with, or kittens that can teleport into your lap. Next.
Okay. If life were a video game, what would some of the cheat codes be?
Oh, unlimited money. I feel like that one already has like some of it. Like health that like doubles quicker, you know, like respawning, like growing bones and stuff. Are we talking about like real life things? Or like, are you saying in my imagined world, what do I wish the cheat codes were?
Let's say imagined world.
Imagined world. Oh, again, I want to teleport. There's all the time.
Okay.
And also telekinesis would be helpful, where you could like lift things without actually lifting them.
Yeah, that is nice.
Yes, fast travel, obviously. Like I said, oh my gosh, if you could just have like an unlimited what do they call that, where you're holding things, what what you carry with you, your inventory.
Like Hermione's bag that has
like an endless,
yeah,
that would be so helpful. And if it like automatically organized itself, perfect.
Oh yeah,
you know?
yeah, that'd be great. Okay, last two.
Okay, right. Next.
What two sets of items would be the what two sets of items would be the strangest to explain to a cashier? If you were to make two different items up to a cashier, what would be the two weirdest things?
First of all, I feel like cashiers like don't even pay attention. They're just like trying to get through their
they don't.
Yes.
I think, let's see. That is a really good question. I want to go like weird with it. I want to say like baby food and those like tiny little forks that like come with like cocktail forks. Yeah, you know, like itty bitty silverware. That's what I would say.
All right. And if you were wrongfully put into an insane asylum, how would you convince them that you're actually sane and not pretending to not be sane?
I think I probably, if this actually happened to me, this would be like super tragic and I probably would freak out. But like eventually I would just like, because I've had dreams like this where you've like had to convince somebody that like you're a real person, you know?
Yeah.
And like, and I would probably just have like a very calm conversation with them and be like, hey, could I call somebody? And I would call somebody who I would know would have my back and say like, no, she's not, or whatever. And then ultimately, if they don't believe me, I would just like devise a plan to like pretend that I'm a nurse. All I need is a clipboard. Like, and I would just like get a clipboard, walk with confidence. I could get out of that insane asylum in 2 seconds. Did I ever tell you about the time I snuck into a hospital on accident? Like after hours? Like
no, say it real quick.
Yeah, no, I make a joke in my stand-up that I have resting approachable face.
Okay. Yeah.
And I literally at one point I broke my foot and like had to go and get my my files, and I walked in, like saw the security guard and was like, oh hi, how's it going? Went up to like the hospital room, whatever, and realized like, oh, there's nobody around here. And I like go and try to open the door and it was 100% locked. And that security guard was definitely supposed to stop me, but just didn't, because I was just like, hi, you know, people will trust you. People will trust you if you let them trust you, you know, don't give them a reason to not. Yes. It's the confidence. And also don't make eye contact, then they won't stop you.
Yeah.
Confidence. Don't make eye contact. They'll just be like, they'll keep on engaging in their own little world, you know? It's good stuff.
That's great. Okay. Well, Amanda, this was amazing. I'm so glad we did this. I loved every second of this. Where can the people find you? What are you doing?
Yes. So I am at Kinda Touchy Feely on Instagram.
Great handle. Oh, can you tell your bio really quick? Because your
my bio is lady comic in the streets, Jesus freak in the sheets.
That's my favorite bio. I love that. Yeah. I laughed out loud when I read that.
Great. I am on TikTok at Amanda Riann Clark. It's Ryan in the middle, spelled Riann. I am on YouTube also, Amanda Riann Clark. I think my Twitter is Amanda C1123, and I think my Venmo is also Amanda C1123. If you guys,
we should plug our Venmo at the end. That's a good idea.
I don't have Venmo, but I will use Josh's, so that's fine.
There you go, perfect.
And I'm at Josh Volcano on Instagram and TikTok and Twitter, but I don't really use Twitter. And David.
I'm on david.rdh on Instagram, and I am also on TikTok, even though I still haven't posted, even though on the first, I know, you heard it, on the first episode I said I would use it more. I haven't yet. Please be patient.
Don't say things. That's another thing. That's another pro tip I was going to give in this podcast is like, don't say the thing that you want to do, because that releases the dopamine in your brain as if you've already done it. And it makes, so you have to, like when I did Script Timber, I couldn't tell anybody about it because like you have to like make those goals just for yourself so you actually finish them. So pro tip.
As you guys heard, Amanda just told you guys I will never use TikTok. So that's great. Love it. Okay.
And we are at Creationship Goals on Instagram, even though at this point we haven't posted anything yet because we're recording first and then posting. But that is where you can find our podcast on Instagram. And with that, we will say thank you and good night, goodbye, so long, farewell.
Evie to say goodbye. Thanks, everyone.